What's up, everybody? Ryan Thomas here, live on the Thomas Take Sports Podcast. And oddly enough, this is the first time you guys have seen me with my glasses on the podcast. And I normally don't like to wear my glasses because it has that glare. You can kind of see the screen there. I'm going to take them off just for the sake of the screen and everything like that. But and I can still see everybody. Thank you so much for everybody that has been joining me on the show live on YouTube. I really appreciate it. The subscribers is going up slowly but surely. Per month, I've added probably about 20 subscribers. So if I keep doing this, keep promoting, it should only grow here on out. So thank you so much for tuning in. I want to talk about Bellator MMA. It is no secret that I'm a massive mixed martial arts proponent. Or promoter. I love to promote the sport. I love to cover the sport. I love to talk MMA. And Bellator MMA specifically, an organization that is rising fast, led by Scott Coker, came out with some news recently, a very big signing in terms of the future. Lyoto Machida, the former UFC-led heavyweight champion. We talked about Rashad Evans a little bit earlier, the man that defeated Rashad Evans in the UFC-led heavyweight title fight back in the day, that took the belt from my boy Rashad Evans, was Lyoto Machida. And that night was not a fun one. I wanted to see Rashad be the champ for a little while, and Lyoto ruined that. So Lyoto is still fighting. On a day that Rashad Evans says he's going to retire, oddly enough, Lyoto Machida is pushing on into his second act in his career in Bellator MMA. Obviously, Lyoto's been fighting for quite some time. Fought way back in this really weird organization where he fought BJ Penn at like 100. BJ was like 200 pounds, something crazy. 191 catch weight or something like that. If you guys checked the info on that, I'm pretty sure I'm right. Check for me. And Machida had that career at 205, much like Rashad. After he lost to John Jones at 205, it was kind of a tough, rough sledding for him. If I was really to go into his career and some of the things that I do not admire that he did, was the quote-unquote testosterone replacement therapy. Machida, considered to be in rare company due to the fact that he was a UFC light heavyweight contender, obviously fighting Rashad Evans, and he also fought for the UFC middleweight title, losing to Chris Weidman. After that fight, that loss in July of 2014, he lost to CB Dalloway, lost to Luke Rockhold, lost to Yoel Romero, Derek Brunson, and has back-to-back wins over Eric Anders, which was a fight that I thought he lost, and a head kick, KO, front kick, head kick, whatever you want to call it, in the second round against Vitor Belfort. Now, Vitor was on his farewell tour. It was his last fight in his UFC career. It was the end of the road for Vitor Belfort. So really, it is simply easy for me to say this, and I hate to say it. I hate when people do say this, but Lyoto Machida is a fighter that has passed his prime. And to say that he's not would be a vast overstatement to say that he's not. I mean, the cream of the crop now, the guys that are the cream of the crop, he does own a win over the current light heavyweight champion in Bellator, over the possibly soon-to-be heavyweight champion in Bellator, the man that is still alive in the Bellator tournament, Ryan Bader, who he knocked out in round 2 of their fight back in 2012. I'd like to think, being that that was almost a decade ago, that Ryan Bader is a much better version of himself now than he was then, and that Lyoto Machida is obviously a lot older now than he was then. As I look at his fighter profile right now, age 40, and he signed a 6-fight deal with Bellator MMA. So let's just say he fights 6 times over the next 3 years, 2 fights a year, ideally. He'll be 43 years old by the time he retires. One of his most famous opponents, one of his most famous knockouts, was against a 46-year-old Randy Couture in April of 2011. April 30th, 2011. Obviously, I remember that because that's my birthday, April 30th. My 19th birthday, actually. Date myself. But to say the least, I mean, 24-8. He has 10 of his 24 wins by knockout, 2 by submission, and 12 by decision. My biggest question is, who the hell is Lyoto Machida going to fight in his next fight? He did share the octagon with Quentin Jackson. He lost that fight via split decision. He's boys with Vanderlei Silva. I doubt that fight will ever take place. I doubt that fight would ever take place, but it's possible. Brazil versus Brazil. Maybe the next topic of discussion, Rampage versus Vanderlei Silva 4, could produce the winner of that fight. But at Media Day today, Bellator MMA announced that they have a new streaming service called DAZN, which is called DAZN. I know nothing about it. I've never heard of it. And frankly, I'm a little bit annoyed that they have this streaming service known as DAZN because really, frankly, they're putting their best fight that they've ever put on this streaming service that nobody knows about, that has 1,000 followers on Instagram. You know who's got 1,000 followers on Instagram? More than 1,000 followers on Instagram? This guy. So I'm a little bit skeptical on that. I'm a little bit skeptical on why they are having this massive fight featuring Gegard Mousasi, Rory McDonald in the co-main event, being Rampage versus Vanderlei Silva, 2 MMA champions of yesteryear, fighting again for the 4th time, regardless of how ridiculous that seems, them fighting the 4th time. I would propose that this fight, along with Mousasi and McDonald, could easily be on pay-per-view. $29.99 on pay-per-view, $34.99, $39.99. That's as high as I would go. $39.99 on pay-per-view. Maybe not even on pay-per-view. Put it on the network that you have heavily, heavily invested in, a network that you've shoved down our throats, understandably so. Formerly known as Spike Network, now it is Paramount Network. Why is this massive, massive fight, Gegard Mousasi, Rory McDonald, on DAZN, DAZN? I'm hoping that I'm getting that right. I really hope I'm getting that right. And people are lauding this deal, saying that it gives them more of a puncher's chance at the UFC. New York, or the Los Angeles Times, and I quote, it loads. What the heck? Bellator MMA's bid to compete on the equal footing with UFC gained major traction Tuesday when it announced a 9-figure multi-year deal to stream the Zone over-the-top service. The deal with the Perform Group's platform will launch with a September 29th Bellator card in San Jose that will feature a main event meeting in which Rory McDonald, main event meeting in which middleweight champion Gegard Mousasi will defend the belt against welterweight champion Rory McDonald, and a heavyweight scrap between mixed martial arts legends Quentin Rampage Jackson and Vanderlei Silva. The opening card will additionally mark the beginning of the expected 8-fighter Bellator welterweight Grand Prix. Although none of the participants are yet to be signed to that tournament, the DAZN, the zone investment, is expected to lure all of the division's major players, including McDonald, and there's interest in starting the Grand Prix with a trilogy meeting between former champions Douglas Lima and Andrei Koreshkov. The Zone is planning 6 fight cards annually in 50 with the Paramount Network. A second card will come between October and November as welterweight Grand Prix continues. The strong Bellator division also includes unbeaten Michael Venom Page and rival Britt Paul Daly, along with Riverside's Lorenz Larkin. The Viacom-owned Paramount Network is additionally increasing its financial backing of Bellator in an ongoing push to boost its stable after luring former UFC title challenger McDonald and top 5 contender Mousasi with an eye on other pending free agents. To stand as an equal with the UFC during the life of this deal is the initiative, said Juan Delgado. Our objective is that we wouldn't have done this deal if we wouldn't have looked each other in the eye and agreed to a plan to supercharge the Bellator offering. We feel this is a transformational deal for Bellator and the zone. This gives Bellator the opportunity to truly challenge UFC, and there's a great opportunity to put on interesting fights and go after talent, whether it be UFC talent or develop Bellator's existing talent. Aiming to be the Netflix for sports, the zone currently exists in Canada, Germany, Switzerland, Austria, Japan, and Italy. It will launch a $1 billion deal with boxing promoter Eddie Hearn's Matchroom Boxing to stream boxing cards beginning September 22nd, with the show expected to originate from New York, October card in LA. Though the monthly subscription cost has not been set, some industry insiders are bracing for a $10 to $15 price tag, more than double the $4.99 for the ESPN Plus app that will be airing UFC content in January. I'm sorry, guys, but this is bullshit. I hate to swear. I hate to throw stuff like that out, but ridiculous. The best part of Bellator is that they're not the UFC. Why would I want to watch the same thing twice? The best part of MMA that makes it different from the NFL, that makes it different from MLB, is that MMA is a sport. It is 2 massive leagues within one sport. I like that. I enjoy that. I welcome the idea of that. I welcome the idea of having another football league. I welcome the idea of having another baseball league. I welcome the idea of having another basketball league or another hockey league in the United States. That would be great. That would be fantastic, because my best saying is that competition breeds success and money. More money can be made in sports than what is being made right now, believe it or not. So the zone deal is not one that I'm too happy about. Frankly, I think this is the first misstep in the Scott Coker era in Bellator's history. It's a huge head scratcher. And furthermore, Bellator has to continue these veteran fights. They have to do that. That is a huge knock. The huge knock outside of the zone. This is a new knock on Bellator, the zone. That's the new knock. But what has been a knock time and time again on Bellator is that they put fighters on cards that are long past their prime. Rampage versus Vanderlei fighting for the 4th time is such. Those guys are obviously past their prime. My grandma doesn't even watch MMA. She could tell you that Quentin Rampage Jackson and Vanderlei Silva are way past their prime. They were champions in MMA over 10 years ago. A lot has changed in MMA in 10 years, folks. A lot has changed in the world in 10 years. And these two guys, they're true fighters. They need to get paid. They need to get paid well while they still can, and that's why they are still fighting. The money in MMA now is far better than it was in that day, in that time frame. Money's money. And although I enjoy it, I'm an old school fan. I'm a hardcore fan. It's a fight that's great for the hardcore fans. Each fight has been exciting, whether it was in Pride, the UFC, and now Bellator. But one thing would tell you, in terms of these two fighters being old, they fought in 3 different promotions against each other. Who has ever done that? 3 different promotions. Pride, UFC, and now Bellator. And as much as I love the differences that Bellator offers to the UFC, they'll only be able to do this so long, for so much longer, so they're doing it while they still can. And that's okay. I actually enjoy it. It's, again, one of the many things that makes Bellator different from the UFC is that they cater to every group of fans, the new fans, the old fans, the gimmicky fans, the wrestling fans, signing Jack Swagger. They reach out to all those audiences. I don't want to watch the same thing twice. If I'm watching the UFC, I expect the same UFC product. If I'm watching Bellator, I expect the same Bellator product. I'm not going to pay $4.99 for ESPN Plus to watch the UFC and pay $14.99 to watch Bellator on a streaming service that I've just heard of today. I'd never heard of it prior to today. And I'm a massive nerd when it comes to technology. I work in the technology business. I understand it, and I do not understand this move. The Zone wants to be the Netflix of sports. I think ESPN would fall into that category. I think they got you beat. I think ESPN has got the Zone beat. It's an upstart streaming service. I get it. Bellator is trying to climb into another market, but it falls very, very short from the UFC. I don't think this does anything to help Bellator compete with the UFC. I actually think it sets Bellator back because Bellator's fights are not worth paying for right now. There's so few cards that are worth paying for right now. They've had two pay-per-views in the company's history. Bellator, whatever it was with Quentin and Tito that never happened, and Bellator NYC. So essentially one. And it wasn't that successful. Probably about 200,000 pay-per-view buys, which is okay, but not great. It's actually better than Robert Whittaker and Yoel Romero, Chael versus Vanderlei. That's saying something, UFC. But to say the least, this does nothing to help Bellator. Bellator's greatest asset is that they offer free fights with decent fighters. They have decent fighters. Their roster is growing, as was mentioned in the LA Times article. But why put it on a streaming service, the best fight in the history of their company? Why put that on a upstart streaming service that is apparently $10 or $9.99 or $14.99? No, I'm not doing it. They better make a deal where this is also available. If they want to broaden their global audience, if the Paramount Network is not available globally, which I don't know if it is, but I'm assuming it might be. If it's not, though, the Zone is a great way to build the global audience, and then they can build their regular audience with Paramount. Put these fights on Paramount Network, Bellator. Come on. I have no problem with the fights that they're making whatsoever, even the ones that feature quote-unquote washed-up UFC fighters or fighters of MMA past, ghosts of MMA past. I don't mind that. I understand it. They have to do it while they still can to promote their brand. I get it. But putting those fights on an app for $10 or $15 is stupid. I'm Ryan Thomas. It was a Thomas take on the recent Bellator MMA news. Lyoto Machida, I have no idea who he's fighting, but if he fights Fedor Emelianenko for the heavyweight title, like is what is being rumored, if Fedor makes it to the end, that is ridiculous. Take care, everybody.